I must say, there was something very special about our company. You know, we worked in our own little studio. We were all by ourselves. We never associated with any of the other people doing soaps. We were also on late in the afternoon. The only thing that followed us was the news. So I'm not sure that any of us ever thought that we were really doing a soap. We like to think we were doing an afternoon anthology series, I think. No other show used the kinds of special effects that we did. There were an awful lot of other shows, too, by the way, that we're charting new courses aside from Star Trek. There was Laugh-In, and there was the Monkeys. There were a lot of other shows that were breaking new territory, and we were simply one of them. And it turns out that all of those other shows had their own cult following, which I think is interesting. I remember Chroma Key. I remember the first time that that was ever explained to me. And the first time that I ever worked in Chroma Key, I was working with, I think it was Lara Parker as Angelique and Jonathan Frid as Barnabas. And the three of us were in three totally different sets. And it was Lara laughing, and I was on, I think I was on Widow's Hill, and Jonathan came. I can't even remember, but the fans will, believe me, they'll remember. But it was an extraordinary thing because for all of the intensity of the drama that we were doing, one also had to have a keen mind for all of the technical things, because without the actor being fully aware of marks and the right sight lines and everything, we could have destroyed the effect. So it was a wonderful learning experience. And it seemed like for 4 years, all Maggie Evans or Josette Dupre did was to wander through long corridors of dry ice saying, "Barnabas, where are you? Come to me." I have to be honest, when I see the show, I'm amazed at how few mistakes I see, because I used to finish doing those shows and just be mortified. I couldn't believe we couldn't do them again. There were so many times you wanted to stop and redo something. When I think of some of the things that did happen, and then you see the shows and they were not edited, they're actually not as bad as I remember they could have been. But we were such a good company. And, you know, when I think back on the 4 years that we worked together, there was not an instance of dissension or difficulty among the actors or with the staff or the crew. And we always got together afterwards, and we were very close-knit. And there was a place up on the corner called the Brittany de Soie. And it was a restaurant and had a bar, and it was a wonderful, cozy, sort of Tudor kind of place with wood panels and wood beam ceiling and everything. And we'd all go up there afterward and have a drink and sit and talk. And some of us would have dinner. So we were really a very close-knit group. My contract had expired, and I was working without a contract. And I did the MGM film based on Dark Shadows, House of Dark Shadows. And I really felt that it was time for me to leave. And Dan didn't want me to, and I didn't want to sign another contract. And then I called him one day. I was too nervous to go and see him. And I said that I was getting married and I was moving to Paris. And he said, "Well, that's it, you know, your career is over. I don't know why you would do this." And he tried to discourage me. And then, anyway, in the end, he was very supportive. And I moved to Paris. And about 6 months later, I was walking down the Champs-Élysées to, actually it was to the Rond-Point, and to the drugstore there. And they had all of these movie magazines, American ones. And I saw my face on the cover of one, and I picked it up and turned to the story about me, and it said, actress Kathryn Leigh Scott has given up her career to marry fiancé Ben Martin and move to Paris. And I just wept. I felt so bad because I was at that time doing a film in France, starring in it and playing twins, and I felt that I had this wonderful career still ahead of me and that I hadn't ruined anything by moving to Europe. And I just stood there and wept. I felt so bad when Dark Shadows was canceled, and it came as a complete surprise because when I left, the ratings were at their highest. I think that was in November of 1970. And they were high, and the movie was just coming out, and everything was wonderful. And within 6 months, the show was off the air. In fact, the show was off the air for perhaps 6 or 7 weeks before I learned that it had been canceled, and I really felt bad. I think Barnabas probably saved the show from oblivion. I think the reason why 25 years later we're still seeing Dark Shadows on home video, and there's a new primetime series, and we're still watching the old episodes on television, I think it's really because of Jonathan Frid. He brought something very special to the show with the way he played Barnabas the vampire. He brought qualities to that character that I think had an effect on all of us. We were all influenced by the complexity and the depth that he brought to that role. And I think it set our show apart. There was always something surreal and magical and romantic and fantastical about it. But with Jonathan, there was a kind of humanity that he brought to it, and we all started finding that in our roles. It wasn't until Jonathan was on the show that we went back in time.
Right.
So he had a huge influence on the show.